just waiting to make sure that the stream is live. Looks like it is. All right, good. So let me stop this. All right. So what I'm going to do today is add some stuff to the game live. Should only take 20 minutes or so, I think. We'll see how it goes. So the first thing I wanted to do was show you kind of where I was at with some recent content creation stuff that I've done. I've been working on this wild sheep in the game called I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. They're from Europe. They're called mouflon. It's kind of like the European equivalent of mouflon, kind of European equivalent of a bighorn sheep. And so this is what they look like when they have a baby. And like just like everything in this game, these are made up of these little hand drawn pieces that were all drawn separately and then scanned in. So I've got a bunch of interactions that can happen with this thing. You can hunt it with a bow and arrow and shoot it, and you can then take away its little lamb. And the idea is that this can kind of abstractly represent what like animal husbandry and animal domestication. In obviously that kind of stuff happened over hundreds of generations potentially, but I still want to kind of represent it in the game. I'm not going to have all these gradual steps from a wild sheep to a domestic sheep. But if you take one of these wild lambs and start taking care of it, then a generation or so in, when it has babies, it'll start having domesticated lambs. And so right now, all I have is these wild things in the game. I see someone in chat there. Hey, the ham bone. Thanks for joining us. Anyway, the idea is that I need to add a domesticated sheep. And let me show you just like kind of where this kind of stuff is at right now in terms of what we can do. I've got the scene editor here where I can pull up like this test scene where I've got a fence, and I also added fencing to the game recently. Sort of a wooden cheap wall that doesn't provide any insulation value. Actually, I should make sure it doesn't provide insulation value. Let me do that right now. I might have had it provide insulation. Oh my gosh, the fence is insulating. I'll fix that right now. So yeah, because I was using walls as sort of a template for the way the fence was placed. So even the empty fence posts with no fence crossbar is providing insulation. That's no good. All right, so fences are walls that can be made pretty cheaply with wood and not too many steps. They keep animals in. They're pretty easy for people to get in and out through. I'll show you that in a second. So I don't think I left R values for any of this other stuff. Okay, so anyway, back in the scene editor, I've got this little test scene with one of these mouflons in here and some other fire and stuff so that when I kill it, and I can test cooking the meat. And I'll just show you the way I kind of test this stuff when I'm... So I can export this test map and then restart my server over here so that it'll load that test map, and then I can run. So it's got an infinite map, 4 billion by 4 billion of wilderness around me, but in the center it's loaded this little test scene so I can test these different things out together. So if I wait for a little while, and this is sped up, I have this happens every 5 seconds or so just for testing. This mouflon will have a baby. If I shoot it, the baby is sort of left there waiting for me. I can go and get my arrow back, of course, and then let me go and steal this little baby away. So now I've got this little baby sheep, and I can place it down. It'll stay kind of in this pen because it can't get out. But I, as a human, can open this and walk out. So anyway, what's going to happen? This is all kind of on a sped up timeline because I'm just testing this, right? So I have these set to like 5-second transitions. But in about so there the sheep grew up. It's still a mouflon, but now it's a domestic mouflon, as you can see at the bottom of the screen here. Actually, let me move this up so you can see the bottom of the window a little bit better. Is that better? Yeah. So you can see it's a domestic mouflon. If I wait a little bit longer, it's going to have a lamb of its own. In the meantime, let's make a knife and butcher this guy here.
So I got his pelt, and then if I chop him up, I can get pieces of meat. Okay, so there the domesticated mouflon now has, it says there, a domestic mouflon with a lamb. And if we wait a little bit longer, that mouflon lamb is going to leave its parent in a second and and go running off on its own. I'm not going to do this too long, but you're going to get to see what's happening here. I don't have to do anything to influence this breeding that's going on right now. This mouflon in about 5 seconds will become a full-grown mouflon. This one's going to have another baby in about 5 seconds. So you can imagine what's going to happen. In the meantime, I'm going to try and heat up this oven so I can cook some of these chunks of meat here. Okay, so now we have 2, right? And each of these, in about 5 seconds, are going to have another lamb that's going to leave. And before we know it, this entire pen is just going to be filled. Okay, I got a hot oven here. Cook some meat and eat it. So before we know it, this entire pen is just going to be filled with mouflon. There's no limit on their breeding. Even if I died and left this here, this would eventually fill up. So that guy I think he's gonna have another baby in a second. Well, maybe that's not working quite right now for some reason. Come on. Oh, there he goes. So there he has his baby. Anyway, so there's a bunch of things I need to iron out here. First of all, I don't want them to keep turning into regular wild looking mouflon after they've been in captivity like they have. These domestic ones also, you'll notice, will follow me around. Whereas a wild one, if I can find one out in the wild again, they run away, right? So they have different behaviors. So now I have 3 of them, and this one's about to leave its parent, and then I'm gonna have 4, and then these guys, and these guys. So anyway, it's exponential growth here, and this pen will fill up with them. So those are problems I need to address today in what I'm working on. Okay, so going back into the editor, let's get this lined up with the screen. All right, so first things first, the drawings. So I can flip. I've got 2 mice over here. I got to flip on my other streaming computer so we can see close up of these drawings, right? So I think you can see this. These are the parts of the sheep drawn as line art, along with the fleece, a spinning device that you can use to spin the fleece, and different sized balls of yarn, along with, up in this corner, some stuff that you can make, like booties and a wool shirt and a wool hat, which I'm eventually going to have be dyeable, but right now they're just naturally colored. And those are the other parts of the domestic sheep. So the domestic sheep has a little bit more of a cartoony kind of look than the wild sheep. I'm thinking that I'm going to kind of continue that trend for domestic animals versus wild animals. I mean, we got this, art style for the people that is, very, very cartoony. And then they're in this world that looks a little bit more, I mean, it's still stylized, but a little bit more photorealistic, right? I mean, that mouflon does look quite a bit like a drawing of what the real thing looks like. But what do these domestic animals look like? I mean, domestic animals are sort of strange creations of humans, right? So I'm going to make them look a little bit more like they are cut from the same cloth as the humans, like this kind of googly-eyed sheep here. We're going to see I don't even know what it's going to look like once it's put together. And then on a separate sheet, we have the coloring. So this gets scanned in as a separate layer. So then the sharp black and white lines can be composited against these outlined things to provide to control where the transparency is. So the hairier lines can hang outside of the opaque regions. So there's the coloring of the balls of yarn. You can see there's shading. This was all done with these. Hold on a second. I'm going to grab some equipment. So this was all done with these Uniball Vision pens, not Vision Elite, Vision. These are like probably the best liquid ink ballpoint type rollerball pens in the world, because they're the only one that I've ever found that is mostly waterproof, and they also are extremely fade proof, and they have that nice kind of wet rollerball kind of ink to them. It's not a greasy, it's a liquid ink. It's not a greasy or a gel ink, so it doesn't clump up or anything. It really kind of goes down almost like a fountain pen type ink, and it's also waterproof and all that. And then I'm coloring them with these. Can you see that? These are these Tombow brush markers. So they have this thing that's like a little brush at the tip that is really, I don't know, I don't want to get it on my hands but it's soft and flexible. It's almost like a brush. I mean, it doesn't have separate fibers or anything. And that's what I'm using mostly. I mean, there is this little chisel tip on the other end, but I don't really use that. And so these will blend together really well to get like these really like soft shading kinds of things that look quite a bit like watercolor.
but they dry fast, and you're not dealing with watercolor. So the first step here is to pull up the scanner. And I am not going to turn my webcam over to look at the scanner, but you can trust me that I'm sticking this on the scanner. USB cable on my webcam has been acting up, and so it's a pretty fragile setup right now. If I wiggle it around too much, I think it's going to. Let me get back to so you can see what's on my screen. So I scan in this whole sheet of stuff all at once. I mean, this is like 20 or so sprites all together. And then I pick the area that I want, and I apply just the scanner's built-in auto exposure, built-in unsharp mask happens. It's coming in at 72 DPI, that's screen resolution. My chair has, hold on. There we go. One of the crossbars of my chair is hitting my mic stand. All right, here we go. So now that looks good, and we got the area that we want, we scan it in, just overwrite default file. It always is coming in the same spot. That's what my editor's doing, is just looking for this default file location to pull this file in. So now I can import it into here, and we can see what it's going to look like. Now this is not with the line art on it, but we can still look to see whether our outlines are working. I can adjust the threshold that's used to detect opacity, and that looks good once I adjust that threshold for those parts. I usually go through and just make sure that the opacity settings look okay, and there's not like some object that's transparent that shouldn't be because the blackout. So the algorithm that I've developed is looking for these black outlines. So it walks, when you make a rectangle around something, it walks from the edges of the rectangle in until it finds a black outline, and then everything beyond the black outline, inside the black outline, is made solid, and then there's a little shadow that's added, and I can show you. So there's a couple of other settings here you can adjust. After you cut out a sprite, you can adjust the saturation, so you can turn something down like all the way to like black and white if you want. I'm going to put it back to the default. And then there's this black threshold, which is controlling, can't see it on here until I move the page out of the way. There's a black threshold that is controlling this algorithm and how black it has to be essentially, or until it finds an outline. And there's also ability to control how dark that shadow. There's like an automatic drop shadow that's added, so I can turn that off for certain parts if I don't want a shadow. But I usually leave it at 50%. Okay, so going through this again, just really quickly, making sure that all these parts are being cut out correctly and don't have some kind of transparency that I don't want. That looks great. Now the next part is the line art, which isn't as finicky because it's coming in. The black outlines are not respected on it, and so where these solid regions have to have these very clean black outlines, which has a much more kind of cartoony look. The next thing I'm going to bring in can have very fine lines that crisscross, occluded. There's also like, you can't have like an occluded area, a contained area here that's supposed to be transparent, right? Because it's looking from the outside in. So these other parts here, this next layer it's like kind of, anything goes on this layer. You have very wispy stuff, swirly stuff with all sorts of little white areas that are enclosed, because those all become transparent in the way that this line overlay is applied. Oh, you need a link to the pen? Uniball Vision, man. It's very common. I mean, most stores actually have this. This is the other thing about the Uniball Vision pens, is they're kind of a commodity, right? I mean, like any office store has them, any student kind of bookstore will have them. So they're not really meant for artwork, right? But a lot of artists, when I was looking and doing research on watercolor, people who are carrying a pen to do watercolor kind of sketches in their notebooks and stuff, a lot of people are recommending this as the only thing. I mean, aside from like India ink or some kind of permanent marker. And markers, felt tip markers, just don't feel good on the page the way, they're just not smooth. They kind of have a rough feeling. I wouldn't want to be using something like a Sharpie every day anyway, because I'd be like breathing those fumes. And did I scan that in? Yes. All right. So now we do a line import, and in come these lines. Now the lines, as you can see, are treated differently, right? There's no transparency respected on them. They're completely transparent, and they just kind of darken the image in this kind of overlay way. And they're all black and white. So even if I put like colored marker on this line overlay, it wouldn't. So I get them lined up here. And I'm going to make a tag here for the domestic sheep. So let's look at the parts of the sheep here and get, sometimes if I shifted the paper a little bit in the middle of my drawing, things aren't lined up quite perfectly on all the different parts, but this looks pretty good. So here's the sheep's head. Actually, this is a center mark for a sprite, so that controls where the sprite rotates. I might want the sheep's head to rotate a little bit, so I'll set that. These eyes, it won't matter. I think I'll bring the eyes in separately just so I can control how far apart they are. So I wonder if I could show you this. Let me move this temporarily up here. So when I'm selecting the stuff, you can see there's this little zoomed in thing down here that gives me like a finer view of what I'm working with, right? So if I want to like get between two little bits of pixels, I can kind of see the pixels down here in this view, in this zoom window. But I kind of feel like it's probably, most of the time, it's probably distracting to have that flipping around down there. So I'm covering it up with my face right now. So this is a little tuft of hair for the top of the sheep's head. And now we got the sheep's body when he's shorn, which is bald and kind of pink, and then his body when he's got a full fleece. And then each of these little legs, and these legs are gonna, the rotation points are gonna matter because these are gonna be animated and they're gonna move around. So parts of the body that aren't gonna rotate, I don't usually set these anchors on. But for these little legs. And the idea with this sheep is that after he's shorn, he's still gonna have these little puffs of fur on his legs because my animation system doesn't, everything has to have kind of a sharp edge on the edge of it. And so like jointed limbs that aren't just black look a little strange. Okay, so those are the parts of the domestic sheep. So let's wait for a minute and go in and we'll do some of these, pull some of these other parts in a little bit later, just to show the next phase here. Let's start putting the sheep together. So there's the body. Let's get the face in there. So there's the face, and I can set a parent relationship between different parts. So that face will always move with the body, but the face can move separately from the body. Let's put some eyes on the face. I don't know. There's another eye. And I'm going to make these parented to, I would just right click on something to set the parent layer. So now the eyes move with the face and the face moves with the body. And then actually I need to move those eyes down. Lots of arrow controls. So let's get that. There he goes. All right, now we can move this bit of fluff down a little bit. Okay, now we got ears, which I think I've not seen this put together yet, so it's pretty funny to see them. I thought maybe these ears would go behind the tuft of hair. I think that does look better. So let's get the tuft of hair out of there. Let's just put the ears in a good spot and link them to the face so they move with the face. And then maybe I can rotate one of them down. No, well, I could also rotate these down and have them hang down like that. Maybe that's better. So I've noticed with rotations, just because of the way graphics cards rotate things, that anything other than these 90-degree angles is a little bit blurry. I don't know, it's hard to see. I could do it. I'll move my face out of the way and you can look at the zoom view as well. So I'm not happy with this, right? You can see that it's been sort of blurred by the interpolation. I'm not sure if you can see this in the stream, but when I do 90-degree increments, of course, it's like pixel perfect, right? And I spent a lot of time getting the scanning stuff to work, so I really want everything to be pixel perfect. So if I'm going to do the ears, they either have to stick up or hang down. I think actually hanging down looks pretty good on this guy. So now his face is all together. I'm going to put his hair on his face so it moves with it. So there's a little sheep face. Wow, that looks pretty cool. All right, and then let's see, what else did we have? We also have his legs, and I'm not really sure how these are going to work. I think on his on this version of him, they're going to go under his body like that, probably. There it goes. And then his little front legs. Looking pretty good.
one should be in front of this one. It is. All right. All right. He looks pretty good. All right. And these all need to be anchored onto his body so that they move with him. So this is the domestic sheep. And I'm just going to save him right now just so we don't lose him. So he looks pretty cool. I'm going to maybe move these in a little bit closer. I think it'll look funnier if his legs are a little bit close together like that, maybe. Closer to the center of his belly. All right. Looking pretty good. Now, I got to remind myself, if I look at like a wolf or some other moving object, where they stand. So they stand in between these two boxes. All right, so let's bring them down. So that's there, and then I'm going to take the mouflon and bring him in just temporarily so I can get his shadow and steal it. Get rid of his parts, but I got his shadow in there. Make sure that goes to the bottom. All right, so he's got a couple of shadows under him. This one is like kind of a belly shadow, and then he's got little shadows that can move when he's being animated. So where's the next one? B. Okay, so there he is with the shadow. All right, so now next step for this guy is to animate him. So there's nothing else about him that we need to deal with, really. Oh, he's permanent, so he can't be picked up by somebody who just grabs him. And that is the only special setting that he needs to have, I think. Oh, what biome does he? He doesn't exist in any biomes. He has a 0% chance of occurring on the map naturally. So that's fine. All right, and you can see if we compare him to the domestic, even like the mouflon, we kind of swap back and forth between these guys. They have a very different look, and I think I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to stick with this idea of the domestic animals being kind of funny and cartoony. See if we can get his eyes to look a little bit funnier. That's probably better. But I'm doing this for now, so I think it's all right. I mean, he doesn't look totally cartoony. He does look, he definitely looks very different than his noble wild companion. Thanks Bradley there. All right. Can we move his head in too? Let's look at. Does he got better? Does he look funnier with the head like closer to his body or further out? Probably where I originally had it. All right. Low down, high up. But all right, that's fine. All right. So now animating this guy. So the only animation that he's going to have is his moving animation. So there's a little preview that shows what the ground is going to be moving past him like. I guess I was going to make these guys kind of slow. So actually, if I go back into here, I can adjust his speed. Let's just try half speed and just to see what that looks like. So slows down the preview here so we can get him lined up to this half speed ground that's going by him. So for the wild mouflon, or the domestic mouflon, I have him kind of doing this jumping thing. So I'm going to try and copy that and try it on the sheep as well. Okay. All right, so there's that. And did he get... Yeah, so he's jumping and shadows in the right spot while he jumps. And I don't know. Let's save this and then let's just be real cheap right now and just copy these leg movements as well. Sometimes I'll do something where I'll copy the entire thing over and then replace the sprites one by one, but I didn't do that this time, so I'm just... so the idea here is to just get animations done that are passable as quickly as possible, because I'm going to have hundreds of different animals eventually in this game. And so I can't be sitting here like spending a lot of time like tweaking an animation forever, right? So I'm going to adjust this a little bit, I think. But, you know, actually, that kind of looks all right. Let's, since he doesn't have a neck, like the Mouflon had a neck, so his head wouldn't move that well. What is this speed here? This is happening at 3 times a second. So let's give his head a little Y oscillation here. So I can adjust this Y oscillation and how much it moves, right? So you can really see, like, I mean, I guess I should be also showing what this animation editor does, right? It's got these little sliders, and you can really tweak things by hand. We can also give it some X amplitude, you know. So it's all harmonic motion, but I found that harmonic motion can really capture a lot of what we want to capture with animation, like walk cycles and machines moving and animals hopping and different kinds of things like that. All can look pretty good with just harmonic motion. So anyway, I'm going to put this up to 3 so it matches his gait speed, and just lower it down until it looks good. Okay, that looks all right in terms of speed, and then I can adjust the phase relative to him. And actually, that's too big, so let's take it down half and see how that looks. So that gives him a little bit more liveliness, having his head move a little bit. And we can also do, that's pretty good right there. And maybe still too much, so let's take it down to 3. So yeah, okay, so that's perfect. All right. Yeah, so that looks like a little sheep just hopping along. And also I have some shadow stuff happening here on this guy, so I'm going to copy that as well. So the shadow can fade in and out as it gets higher off the ground, and then these like shadows that are under the feet can move with his feet. Where's the other shadow? There we go. There. And get that shadow. Okay, so those are moving with his feet, but I don't know what happened there. I think I didn't get, let's adjust the phase of one of these. Looks all right. That looks good. All right, so there he is. We can also have, I guess we could make his ears flop a little bit. Let's try that. Oops. That's too much. Just a little bit like that, just to give him a touch of humor there. And find the other ear. So those, and I'll put them out of phase with each other. And this one, I think, is going down too far, so I'm going to raise it up. So I'll start its oscillation a little higher. There we go. All right, so there's our sheep running. Pretty great looking, I think. And so anyway, and then you can watch how it transitions back to your ground. So when he stops running, the animation engine interpolates between animations and just automatically makes them kind of come nicely down to the ground. All right, so okay, so there's sheep. He's looking good. He's animating, and we can come and throw him just very quickly into a scene. Let's go back to this Mouflon scene. Let's put a sheep in there. Oh, forgot one more thing. We got to make him actually move. So he needs to go through transitions that are going to make him move around the map, and essentially works like this. So this is this A plus B equals C. Let's look at some examples here. So where do Mouflon basket of Mouflon bones come from? If you go to the pile, you use your basket on the pile, you get a basket full of bones in your hand, and the pile disappears. So there's all sorts of examples of this. Let's look at how a shot Mouflon comes into existence. By using a bow and arrow on a Mouflon, you get an empty bow and arrow and this dead Mouflon. The other way to get a dead Mouflon with an arrow is to go and take one that has a baby and has been shot with an arrow and take the baby away. So you get the baby with the rope around its neck in your hand, and the mouflon is left by itself without the baby. Okay, so let me get myself back down out of the clouds here. All right, for moving animation, moving transitions work a little bit differently. So there's no kind of tool that is being applied. So the thing kind of turns into itself over a certain amount of time, and it is moving in a certain direction. So it has these different moves that it can make. It can chase a human, the closest human, flee the closest human, walk randomly, go north, south, east, or west, and so on. And so we're going to kind of copy this behavior for the sheep that we have here. So this sheep is going to walk. It's only going to walk one. It's going to do it every 6 seconds. I guess we'll do that for now. And it's going to remain a sheep when it does this. So that should allow it to, in our scene editor, we got the sheep in there. Let's replace this scene, export the test map, and let's jump back into, restart the server with a new test map and jump back in, and we should see that sheep running around. I think I had it set to chase us, so it should chase us. We'll see if we can get it to chase us out of the 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yep. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now, I think it's going to chase us, so I think I can lead it. It's like Mary had a little lamb here. If I open the fence, it'll follow me out, and we can take it for a little walk. Because it's domesticated, it is wanting to stay with us. But if there's no humans around, it would pick a random move instead. All right, so let's open the fence. Come on, sheep, come back in. I don't know if I'm going to wait for him to come back in. So he's domestic. He's pretty slow. He doesn't move very often. He only moves one tile at a time when he moves. If we go out and look at like a wild wolf or something, I mean, it goes pretty far across the map every time it moves, and it makes it much harder to catch and so on. All right, so there's a sheep. Sheep's in the game. Now, next thing, and more important than just domesticating the sheep and seeing him walk around, is we need to hook him into the other parts of the game. And so where does he come from, right? So he doesn't occur in terms of being wild on the map. I do have this domestic lamb. And they currently turn back into a domestic mouflon, which I don't want, right? That's what I'm saying. I don't want those mouflon multiplying like that. So I'm going to change him into a sheep instead. So he's no longer going to turn into a mouflon. He's going to turn into a sheep. The domestic one. Okay, so that's where he comes from. And then what can we do with him? And we still have a problem here with exponential blow up here because there's nothing stopping. Well, actually, domestic sheep never has a baby, so that's one thing that stops them. So right now, this is going to put an end cap on that exponential growth. Every time you want a domestic sheep, according to these rules, you need to go steal a lamb from a wild one and raise one that'll have a baby, and then you get exactly one sheep out of that. So that's fine. So we're not gonna have that blow up anymore. So let's save this. Now, what can we do to the sheep? I already have shears that I drew and brought in before, and they look like this, right? So there's the shears, and I want to take this sheep and turn him into the shorn version of him. And I'm basically gonna, I think, just try replacing his body with something else. Oops. All right, so that's a start. Let me do it again just to make sure I'm getting it in the right spot. So that's a start, and I'm gonna just quickly, actually, hold on a second. So what I'm gonna do is actually duplicate this guy and call him Shorn Domestic Sheep. Shorn, I'm spelling it wrong. Does it have an E? My spelling dictionary, I guess, doesn't have Shorn in it. Anybody in the chat want to look that up for me? That'd be pretty awesome. All right, so I'm gonna save a new one, a domestic Shorn sheep. And in the animation now, for everything, we can just right-click and copy all the animations from the other sheep. So there he is, shorn sheep. Looks just like the domestic sheep when he's running. Now that we've done that, because he has all the same sprites, the sprite engine can copy the animation from him. Now we can go in and replace this sprite with something else. And I'm going to adjust this in a little bit, but let's just save this and go back to the animation engine. Yes, so it's still working. I don't like the way it looks. I'm going to tweak so these legs are actually in this case, bring them to the front so that they're in front of his body. I think that'll look better. And then I'm probably going to... Everything's moving with him, so I don't like that. Let's see. I really want to... Let's take off the parent relationships for a minute, because I want to get that body in a better spot, but I don't want his head and stuff to move. So I think I'm undoing all the parent relationships. So now I can move the body relative to him. That is kind of like what I wanted him to look like, pretty much right there. I still need to go and reattach everything to his body again. So his legs will stay in the same spot when he's shorn, I think. So you can see he just kind of flips into this shorn version of him. And then if we go and look at the animation, I think that'll look better. So that looks pretty good. You see what I had to do there, because of this way this animation engine works is, there's just sprites, right? And they have edges. So I left these little puffs of fur. Like when he's shorn, he has puffs of fur that are left behind. And sheep, when you shear a sheep, you don't actually take the entire pelt off. You do usually leave some around their head and so on. All right. Anyway, so there we go. That's what he's going to look like when he's shorn. Okay, going back into this, the other thing we need to do is make a version of him where we have, so what's this? That's his hair. So I didn't go in and get this yet. So let's re-import those sprites and re-import the lines. Get everything lined up again. Use I guess the eyes as a reference, but usually it's further down on the page. Alignment doesn't quite work. But for this fleece, I can kind of just eyeball it and get it where I want it. I probably want it there. So this is, oh, and we got to adjust this. Okay. So this is fleece. Is that how you spell it? Okay. So there's a fleece, which we're going to bring in. And then this fleece, we're also going to have a version of the sheep right after we, oops, that's not it. Right after we shear him, his fleece is going to be kind of laying on the ground, right? Oh, you just took my fleece. He's not going to be moving or anything. You have to go up to him and kind of grab his fleece at that point. So he's permanent. Let's make him blocking after this happens. So we're just going to call him the same thing. He doesn't move, so I don't even need to worry about any of this stuff. Save a new version of him. So I'm not going to animate this. He's just kind of this is going to happen, and then you're going to go to him and get the fleece away from him afterwards. So let's make a blank version of this fleece. Set it there. It's not blocking. It's not permanent. It's not handheld though. Let's do a held position here. So when someone's carrying the fleece, they kind of just carry it in their arms, and you can see what it looks like on different age people. Okay, so we got that. This is just a fleece, I guess. I think that's how you spell it. And doesn't slow you down or anything. You can pick it up at any age. All right, so there we go. So there's the fleece. Where does the fleece come from? This is all pretty easy, right? So we take the domestic sheep. If you use the shears on it, use the shears. You end up with shears in your hand still, and then you're gonna have the sheep with the fleece down by his legs as a result of that. And then if you just use a bare hand, you're going to get a fleece in your hand, and you can take it away from the sheep after he's been shorn. So he'll just kind of stand there with this fleece waiting for you. I think that's how I'm going to have it work for now. So there's the shorn sheep, all that. Oh, no, this got screwed up. I don't know where that last use thing came from there. I picked some other transition and copied it by accident. All right, so let's get rid of this. This is not a last use. All right. So where does this come from? Comes from stealing the fleece from a shorn sheep. Shorn sheep comes from using the shears on him. All right. So there's that transition for him to shear him. And I think, we also need to set up his moving transition. So let's look at the domestic sheep. And what's the moving transition? That's fine. He's chasing you. I think I'm going to make the shorn version of this guy run away from you. So he's going to move with the same speed every 6 seconds, going 1. he's gonna flee you because he's like upset with you. All right. So there's a sheep. Shear him. He can run away from you. You can get the fleece from him. How long does it take him to grow the fleece back? I'm probably gonna do something where you have to feed him in order to get to grow back. So I'm gonna do that later. So let's keep on with the other things that you can do with this fleece. So let's go back to the sprites that I'm pulling in. Oh, what was this called? This is called. Geez, I can't remember what it's called. A drop spindle. That's right. So this little thing here is called a drop spindle. I'm gonna get this lined up. Looks fine. Okay, drop spindle is just something that you're gonna make out of wood, and then once you've got the drop spindle, there's these balls of yarn that you can make. So all right, and then of course knitting needles. All right, knitting needles, and that looks lined up properly. So knitting needles, and then these bits of clothing up here, which I think, yeah, that's fine. All right, so I think the alignment on this is okay. Let's see if I can. All right, and then this is wool hat. Looks fine. Wool sweater. And wool booty. Booty? I think that's how you spell it. All right. All right. So now that you got the fleece, if you use the drop spindle on it, which we're going to say here, it's a handheld object. Gets held in your hand right about there. So you got a drop spindle, you use it on the fleece, you're going to end up with a ball of yarn. It's a small ball of yarn, and the idea is you combine these together. A small ball of yarn, and then a small ball of yarn becomes a big ball of yarn, and then a huge ball of yarn if you combine them together. Position, that's fine. Oh, I lost my small one. That's fine. Save new. So the small ball of yarn becomes a bigger ball of yarn, and then it'll become a huge ball of yarn. All right, that's fine. I think actually once it's big enough, maybe don't hold it in your hand anymore. Well, let's just leave it there for now. This is the huge ball of yarn. Okay, so small, big, huge, right? Okay, so those are the things you can, okay, so that's the drop spindle. What can you do with the yarn? You can knit it. So that's where these knitting needles are going to come in. They're also held in your hand, but I'm going to have them held right on the cross there. Knitting needles, and that's going to come from two skewers put together. Knitting needles, save new. All right, and then finally, so the drop spindle makes the yarn out of the fleece. Fleece can be combined. Then we have these bits of clothing, right? So this is a wool hat. Let's say that's not handheld. Let's say that it's just held kind of in front of the body. And it's a piece of clothing. So let's save it and then let's do a position test on it. So this is how someone looks wearing it. It's like a model that we can see, and we can go and like page through different people, what they're going to look like wearing the hat, and get in a good position for all of them. Oh, that doesn't look so good. That's better. Pretty good. Actually, I think I'm going to have it come down further. That doesn't look so great up higher. Okay, so there's the wool hat on somebody's head. We can also see what it looks like on different age people. All right, let's replace that. So there's the wool hat, and then we're gonna have the wool sweater. Similar kind of situation. Again, this is held up against the body, not in the hand, and it's a tunic. Let me look at the position of how it looks on somebody. I'm really worried with this one that the breasts are going to stick out, but they don't seem to be, so that's good. Nice, 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 nice. Looking good. All right. So there's the wool sweater. Save a new one. And then we have our wool boots here. Wool booty. So save a new one of these. It is a shoe. So now we got to put it in position on someone's feet. Looks pretty good. Different ages. Babies look good. All right. So there's the wool booty. And now we can come into the animation engine and just look at somebody and have them dress up and all this stuff. So first of all, we can say, what does it look like when they're holding a ball of yarn? What does it look like when they're wearing this stuff? Looks pretty good. We can slow down time just to see. All right, so that's looking pretty good in terms of a wool outfit that you made. Nice fuzzy little edges on it and everything. And this is undyed wool. I'm going to have wool dyeing stuff happen a little bit later. So you'll be able to change the color of this. All right, so got that stuff. What do we need next? Okay, so now we just need to hook all this stuff together with transitions, right? So we got this sheep. We know where it comes from. I'm going to do a little bit more work on some of the stuff to control the timing of sheep breeding and development and feeding and so on offline. But I'm going to finish hooking these pieces together. So first of all, where do the knitting needles come from? Go into the transition editor. Knitting needles come from putting two skewers together. So a skewer plus a skewer gives you knitting needles. Knitting needles. Okay. So there's where your knitting needles come from. Two skewers. Then what can you do with the drop spindle? Drop spindle plus fleece gives you a small ball of yarn, and you end up with the drop spindle still in your hand. And then where does these other size balls of yarn come from? You just roll two balls together to get a big ball of yarn. There's small plus small equals big, and small plus big gives you a huge ball of yarn. So that's how you can combine balls of yarn. And then the knitting needles on these different sizes. So the small ball of yarn, along with knitting needles, makes the booty. And then the huge ball of yarn makes the sweater. And the big ball of yarn makes the hat. All right, so that is everything, right? Shearing, domestication of sheep. One other thing. Okay, this is a fun part here. So now the only thing we didn't do yet was add, and I think this is going to work through the stream, add the sounds. Oh, also I didn't put the sounds for the sheep walking. So he has no sounds when he's moving. So we're going to copy all the sounds. Oops. Actually, let's do, that's fine. And bring them in here and paste into the domestic sheep. That's fine. Okay, so he has sounds now for his movement that I just copied from the mouflon. But I do want him, when he gets shorn, to have a funny reaction, right? So a sound. So when he's created, when he gets shorn,
Oh geez. Oh, actually, it's not even this one. It's this one that I need to have the sound on. So I need to record this sound now. Okay, here we go. First of all, there's the sound of him being clipped. Also, then kind of combined with the sound of him like complaining. I wonder if I put this up on him. No, that doesn't look good. All right. I'm just wondering if there's some other way to communicate this without having two sounds kind of on top of each other. But okay, here we go. All right, first try. Okay, so when he gets shorn, that's the noise he's gonna make. All right, and is there any other sounds? Oh, we do need some other sounds. Okay, so we need sounds for make. Oh, so, I forgot one more thing. Where does the drop spindle come from? It's gonna come from putting a wooden wheel. Ooh, this is gonna be, yeah, this is kind of a late stage tech, right? Because you need all this woodworking stuff to make the wooden wheel. Wooden wheel plus a short shaft will give you a drop spindle. Did I do the drop spindle? I will see that. I gotta check that. So that's how you make a drop spindle. It can work either way, so I'll have both. And the drop spindle plus the fleece makes a small ball of yarn. All right, so there's that. Forgot about that. What does it sound like when you make a drop spindle? Some kind of wood going through, squeaking kind of sound. That's pretty good. And then what does it sound like when you spin a small ball of yarn? It's going to be like a spinning kind of flipping sound. Let's think. Oh boy. There we go. It's like a. I'm wondering if that's. Yeah, it sounds like something spinning really fast. All right, so that's where that comes from. And then when you combine two balls of yarn together to make a bigger ball, that'll be like a wrapping sound. All right, that's good. So I'm going to replace that. And then I'm also just going to copy this sound and use it to make, when you're making the big ball, the huge ball as well, it's the same thing. All right, so there's that. Knitting needles. They have a sound when they're created. I'll just make a clicking sound. All right. Yeah, making the sounds is probably the most entertaining part of this whole thing. Too bad it happens at the very end here. Okay, and then what does it sound like to knit a sweater or knit anything, right? All right, that's what it sounds like to knit something. All right, and then I'm just going to copy this sound and use it on the other knitting items. Oops, didn't save it. All right, so now we have. All right, so I think there's sounds for everything, including the sheep being shorn. What about a sound when we pick up the fleece? I think there's just gonna be a default sound that plays there. Maybe I'll make one. Gathering wool sound. And then don't forget this. Okay. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's get them into a test scene. I think I actually, in my test scene, I've got everything in here that's needed to shear. Let's get some more wild mouflon in here. I'm going to put some domestic ones in. So, yeah, let's get some domestic ones in. They're going to have the babies. That'll make sure that they are turning into domestic sheep, and then get some skewers in here for the knitting needles and a wheel, just to make sure all this stuff is working. And ooh, it's getting crowded in here. Wheel, shaft, short shaft. There's enough here to make that. So that should do it. All right. And the sheep will never grow its fleece back. I'm going to deal with that stuff later offline. All right. So let's replace this, export the map, and restart the server so it loads the map. All right. So this is pretty much the end of the video here, just making sure that this stuff works correctly. All right. So coming in. So we're gonna wait for some of these. Okay, well while we're waiting, let's make the so their baby should leave them soon. Make 2 blades. Put the 2 blades together, and then hammer them together to make the shears. Okay, so we got some lambs running around here, and we're gonna see. Hopefully, they're going to turn into domestic sheep, since they've been. Ah, yes, it's working. So I'm gonna have a little flock here. All right, so all right, and they are all following me because they're all domesticated. So that's kind of sweet. All right, so now let me go and shear some of these bad boys here. All right, so they got shorn. So I got the wool out of that guy. Let's try and make my spinning wheel here. That worked. So that made some yarn. And combine them and make some knitting needles. All right, so I should be able to knit a booty. Yeah, that worked. So I got one boot on. Now I got these lambs, these sheep are just kind of waiting around for me to. Oh, it's getting crowded in here. Okay, so now I can spin. Where'd my? Oh no! Oh no! There it is. Thought I lost it. Wait a minute. They grew wool back. Oh! The domestic mouflon are still having babies. All right, I will have to deal with that later. Got a lot of wool here. Okay, so there's that. This knitting sound I think is too long. I need to make that shorter, so I'm gonna go back and fix that. All right, and so I got that. And let's just make a hat too. All right, and let's knit. All right, there's my hat. Getting hungry here. All right. So it's getting kind of. I guess I would say it's getting kind of woolly, right? All right. So there's that. Let's go in and just do the last thing, which is to fix that sound, and then I'm gonna end the broadcast. All right. So the sound of knitting something just felt too long. I'm gonna do another one.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So. All right. So everything is so we started out um, with just these. Let me flip back here. With just these very simple drawings, right? Which didn't take me all that long to draw. I mean, I know we've been doing this for about an hour, which I would, if I wasn't talking and explaining everything, would have happened quite a bit quicker. But this is a sheet with quite a few different things on it, right? So we started off with just these wild mouflons and their babies, and eating them, and we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different things that are all kind of interacting and tightly knit together, right? So it is possible to get 12 or so things in an hour, and definitely possible to do 20 or 30 in a day if I really crank away. Anyway, so yeah, and all this stuff is like interactive, and it allows. Oh, we forgot to make the clothing warm. Let's do that. Let's compare it to the fur clothing. I don't remember what. So this is 0.85 coat. The coat was 0.85. I think these all kind of cover different parts of your body and add up 7. So let's say, and the shoe is 0.85. Let's make these a little bit, they're not quite as warm as the rabbit fur stuff. So this is 0.7. This is 0.7 as well. All right, so that's it from domestication of sheep all the way up to using their wool for something. I'll probably do another one of these sometime in the future, maybe after the game is out, showing stuff that I'm adding on a given week. Thank you for watching.